The air was crisp that morning, carrying a hint of fall through the half-open window as Amanda finished packing. I watched her from the kitchen, sipping my coffee as she moved through the house, her heels clicking softly on the wooden floor. She was, as always, perfectly dressed, exuding effortless sophistication. Her brown hair, freshly styled, framed her face beautifully, and the navy suit she wore hugged her figure in a way that underscored her presence in any room. She was preparing for a week-long business trip, a major sales conference a few hours away. Amanda had been mentioning it for weeks, emphasizing its importance for her career. Her team had been organizing it for months, describing it as a key chance to connect with important clients. That's what I kept hearing. Still, there was something different about this trip. She seemed unusually enthusiastic. Her energy was more intense, almost as if she couldn't wait to leave. I attributed it to her ambition. Amanda had always been passionate about her work, and I respected that about her. We lived well, thanks to her hard work and my stable job in IT. It was a partnership, or at least it felt that way once. "Don't wait up for me, okay?" she said, pulling her suitcase to the front door. She glanced back with a smile, bright and flawless, just like her. "I'll miss you," I said, my voice even, forcing a smile. She blew a kiss, her red lips stark against her fair skin. With a last flick of her hair, she turned and opened the door. "Love you," she called out casually, and then she was gone, the door closing quietly behind her. I stood there for a moment, staring at it. The house already felt different, quieter, empty. It wasn't unusual for Amanda to leave for work trips, but this time, the emptiness seemed heavier. Maybe it was the stillness after her rush to leave. I went back to my coffee and glanced at the clock. She'd be gone a full week. I thought of the days ahead, filled with work and routine, nothing exciting. I never liked it when she traveled, but it was part of her job, and I accepted that. She thrived on challenges, and honestly, I sometimes appreciated the space. Amanda's presence could be intense, all-consuming. A break wasn't so bad. But after the sound of her car faded down the driveway, a strange sense of unease settled over me. I couldn't explain it, but I shook it off, trying not to dwell on an unclear feeling. I spent the day working, catching up on reports and emails. The hours passed quietly, uneventfully. Amanda sent a couple of texts in the afternoon, the usual updates. She had checked into her hotel and was getting ready for important meetings. Her messages were brief, but that was normal for her. I replied as needed and continued my day. By evening, I had settled into the silence. I made dinner, ate alone, and flipped through TV channels without really watching. The house felt too silent. I didn't like it, but it wasn't something I could change. A work trip was a work trip, after all. Just as I was about to head to bed early, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at it, expecting another message from Amanda or work notification. But it was from an unknown number. The subject line immediately caught my attention. "You might want to see this." Curiosity got the best of me, and I opened the message. My brow furrowed as the screen loaded, revealing a series of photos. It took me a moment to process what I was seeing, pictures of Amanda. At first, they seemed like candid shots from the conference, maybe shared by someone else. But as I scrolled, my stomach churned. The first photo showed her at a bar, wine glass in hand, laughing with someone unfamiliar. The second showed her with her arm around a man, closer than I'd ever seen her get with any coworker. And the third? It was unmistakable. The two of them in a hotel lobby, his hand on her lower back, their bodies pressed together intimately. My grip tightened around the phone, my heart pounding. A cold sweat covered my skin. I didn't know what to think or feel, but the proof was clear. Amanda, my wife, was with another man. More photos followed, each worse than the last: a night out, a private dinner, and finally, a shot of her entering a hotel room with him. Laughing as if she didn't have a care in the world. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. What was going on? I clicked back to the message, but there was no name, just a single line beneath the images. "Thought you should know." That was it. I sat down, the weight of the situation overwhelming me. For a moment, I couldn't move. The images burned into my mind, filling me with a cold anger I never knew I had. Amanda had always been driven, focused, but this? This was betrayal on a level one hadn't even imagined. I felt the fury boiling inside me, but I didn't lash out. No, anger wouldn't serve me now. What I needed was clarity. I needed to know more. I closed the email and set my phone down deliberately, the rage hardening into something sharper, colder. The week ahead would be the most eventful of her life, but she didn't know that yet. While she believed she was enjoying her freedom, I would be right behind her, planning, preparing. Amanda had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The next morning arrived slowly, the weight of the previous night still pressing on me. I hadn't slept much, how could I after what I'd seen? Amanda had been gone on her work trip for less than 24 hours, and already the truth had come crashing down. The images replayed in my mind like a cruel, unending loop, a dark film I couldn't turn off. My wife, carefree and laughing in the arms of another man. Each picture was like a fresh wound, deepening my disbelief in the woman I thought I knew. But I didn't waste time brooding over anger. I was past hurt and heartbreak. No, this was something else, something colder. I had spent the night collecting my thoughts, planning my next steps. If Amanda thought she could get away with this, she was gravely mistaken. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, scrolling through the messages once again, scrutinizing every detail. Whoever sent these photos knew exactly what they were doing. The angles, the timing, each shot told a story. And the man? I didn't recognize him, but that didn't matter. I didn't need to know him to understand what he meant to Amanda. My focus shifted. The photos were taken at a hotel, the very same one Amanda had casually mentioned when she left for her trip. How convenient. Now I had everything I needed to find her. I booked a flight for the next available plane out of town. If she was meeting this man under the cover of a work trip, I'd be there, watching her every move. I wouldn't miss a thing. As I packed a small overnight bag, I glanced at myself in the hallway mirror. The reflection staring back at me felt foreign. The man I used to be seemed like a distant memory. This version of me, the cold, calculating one, was new. But it fit. I wasn't going to let Amanda destroy me. She didn't know it yet, but I had the upper hand. The train ride was uneventful, with long stretches of empty countryside rolling by as I sat staring out the window. My mind was already in the town ahead. I imagined Amanda wrapped in the illusion that she was untouchable, thinking she could maintain her double life without consequences. It made me laugh, quietly, darkly. She was going to pay for this, and I would ensure every moment of her deception came crashing down. The hotel was easy to locate, one of those upscale places catering to business travelers. As I stepped through the revolving doors, the polished lobby buzzed with quiet efficiency. People in suits rushed past, murmuring into their phones, focused only on their next deal. I couldn't help but wonder how many of them were like Amanda, hiding secrets beneath their composed exteriors. I checked in under a false name, one I'd prepared the night before. No one at the front desk gave me a second look, just another guest passing through. Perfect. My room was on the same floor as Amanda's. I had ensured that with a simple request for a room close to a colleague. People trust you easily when they think you're just another business traveler. After settling in, I unpacked the small camera equipment I'd brought, nothing too obvious, just enough to gather the evidence I needed. Amanda wouldn't see any of it, but she would certainly see the results. I stepped out of my room and wandered down the hall, moving slowly and deliberately. Amanda's room number had been listed on the hotel's website under her conference registration, room 1423. I reached it quietly, my footsteps silent on the plush carpet. The door was closed, of course, but I didn't need to knock. I wasn't there to confront her, not yet. Instead, I walked past, noting the "Do Not Disturb" sign hanging from the handle. Perfect. It meant she was either inside or had left instructions to remain undisturbed. Either way, I had the advantage. I looped around the hallway, taking in the layout and exits. I had all the time in the world. Back in my room, I spread out the blueprint I'd put together. The cameras were small, wireless, and perfect for my plan. I placed one above the headboard, hidden within the molding, and another by the dresser, angled to capture the whole room. Just as I finished, my phone buzzed. It was another email. I glanced at the screen, a smile forming. It was another photo. Amanda with her lover, sitting across from each other in a dimly lit restaurant, his hand resting on hers. They looked comfortable, like they were enjoying their little secret. I tucked my phone away, satisfied. They wouldn't be relaxed much longer. I left the room exactly as I'd found it, locking the door behind me. As I stepped back into the hallway, unnoticed by the cleaning staff, I knew the trap was set. Amanda would return to her room tonight, completely unaware. She would fall into that bed with him, thinking she was still in control. But the truth was already waiting for her, and I would be there to watch it all unfold. The day dragged slowly. I spent it mostly in my hotel room, waiting. Patience was key. Rushing only led to mistakes, and I wasn't going to make any. As evening approached, I made sure everything was in place. The cameras were perfectly positioned, ready to capture every moment in room 1423. I sat on my bed, scrolling through my phone, rereading the anonymous emails. Each one added to the twisted game. More photos of Amanda clinking glasses with him at a bar, his hand on her thigh. He was average-looking, dark-haired, older than her, probably in his early 40s. His identity didn't matter. What mattered was what he represented. Amanda's betrayal laid bare. Around 7 p.m., I got up and left my room, heading toward the elevator. There was no need to rush. Amanda and her lover wouldn't be back yet. They were probably still at dinner, whispering sweet nothings across a candlelit table. The thought didn't anger me anymore, it almost amused me. They had no idea what awaited them. I walked through the lobby, blending in with the other guests. The air was filled with the scent of polished wood and expensive cologne. I moved unnoticed, just another face in a sea of business travelers and tourists. If only they knew what was unfolding just a few floors above. The bar across the street had become my base. It was upscale with low lighting, smooth jazz, and patrons too focused on their cocktails to notice me. I ordered a whiskey neat and settled into a corner booth, my phone on the table. The bartender brought my drink, the amber liquid glowing in the dim light. She didn't realize it yet, but I had the upper hand. The train ride was uneventful, with long stretches of empty countryside rolling by as I stared out the window. My mind already focused on the town ahead. I imagined Amanda wrapped in the illusion of invincibility, believing she could maintain her double life without consequence. It made me laugh quietly. She was going to pay for this, and I would make sure every moment of her betrayal came crashing down. The hotel was easy to locate, one of those upscale spots catering to business travelers. As I stepped through the revolving doors, the polished lobby buzzed with quiet efficiency. People in suits rushed by, talking into their phones, oblivious to everything except their next meeting. I couldn't help but wonder how many of them were like Amanda, hiding secrets beneath their polished exteriors. I checked in under a false name, one I'd prepared the night before. No one at the front desk even glanced twice, just another guest passing through. Perfect. My room was on the same floor as Amanda's, of course. A simple request for a room near a colleague was all it took. People are so trusting when you look like just another business traveler. After settling in, I unpacked the small camera equipment I'd brought, nothing too obvious, just enough to gather the evidence I needed. Amanda wouldn't notice any of it, but she would certainly see the results. I left my room and wandered down the hall, moving slowly, deliberately. Amanda's room number had been listed on the hotel's website under her conference registration, room 1423. I reached it in no time, my footsteps silent on the plush carpet. The door was closed, and the "Do Not Disturb" sign hung from the handle. Perfect. I continued past, taking in the layout and exits of the floor. I had all the time I needed. Back in my room, I spread out my plan. The cameras were small, wireless, and perfectly suited for my needs. I placed one above the headboard, hidden within the decorative molding, and another by the dresser, angled to capture the entire room. Just as I finished, my phone buzzed. Another email. This time, it was a short video clip. Amanda and her lover stepping into the hotel elevator together, his arm around her waist. They looked relaxed, as if they'd done this many times before. I replayed the clip, watching as the elevator doors closed behind them. It was almost laughable how blind they were to what was coming. I paid my tab at the bar across the street and headed back to the hotel. The lobby was quieter now, with only a few people lingering. I slipped into the elevator unnoticed and pressed the button for my floor. My heart beat steadily, the anticipation building as the numbers ticked up. When I reached the hallway outside Amanda's room, everything was still. The door to room 1423 remained closed, the "Do Not Disturb" sign still hanging on the handle. I returned to my room and set up my laptop. The cameras were live, transmitting directly to my screen. Room 1423 appeared in real time. The bed was neatly made, untouched since earlier. But within minutes, that would change. I checked the second camera angle. The view from the dresser was equally clear, capturing the room from another perspective. There would be no hiding from this, no denying it. A few moments later, the door to room 1423 creaked open, and Amanda entered, arm in arm with her lover, laughing softly. I leaned forward, watching as they moved inside, oblivious to being observed. Amanda dropped her purse on a chair, kicked off her heels, and approached the bed. Her lover, well-dressed but exuding a smugness that made my skin crawl, followed closely behind, his hands already on her waist. I watched as he pulled her close, their lips meeting in a kiss that turned my stomach. She seemed entirely comfortable with him, her body language relaxed. I sat back, drumming my fingers lightly on the desk as I watched them. The cameras captured everything, their movements, their voices. My eyes narrowed as the betrayal played out before me. They collapsed onto the bed, entangled, their voices muffled but clear. I hit record, ensuring that every moment was saved. Amanda had no idea that her perfect facade was unraveling. By the end of the night, I'd have more than enough evidence to ensure she could never deny what she'd done. But I wasn't just going to sit back and watch. I wanted them to feel the shock, the horror of discovery. I wanted their moment to shatter, just as they'd shattered my trust. I glanced at the clock. It was almost time. I made my way back to room 1423, my heart steady. I knocked softly at first, then harder. I heard muffled voices inside, the shuffle of movement as Amanda scrambled to make herself decent. I would never forget the panic in her voice as she whispered something to her lover. A few seconds later, the door cracked open slightly, and there she was. Amanda, hair tousled, wrapped in the hotel's white robe. Her face paled instantly, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. She froze, stunned. Surprised? I asked, my voice low and calm. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I pushed the door open fully, stepping inside. Her lover, half-dressed, stood near the bed, looking confused and afraid. Amanda finally found her voice. What are you doing here?" she stammered, clutching the robe tightly. I scanned the room, my tone casual. "Just checking on you. Don't worry, I've got it all on camera." Her face went ashen, the color draining as reality hit. "What do you mean?" she whispered, barely audible. I looked her in the eyes, a cold smile spreading. "I know everything, Amanda. Everything." Her lover shifted uneasily, unsure whether to stay or flee. But he wasn't my concern. I was here to watch Amanda's world collapse. She tried to speak, but I cut her off. "You've been lying to me for a long time," I said, voice steady. "And now? I'm done playing along. I've got everything I need." I turned to leave, watching as the shock on Amanda's face shifted into panic. "Wait," she called after me, but her voice trembled, powerless. The control she'd once had in our relationship was slipping away, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I paused at the door, glancing back one last time. "Enjoy the rest of your night," I said coolly, then walked out into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind me. The game was over. I walked down the hallway with steady, deliberate steps. No one followed. No frantic footsteps, no desperate cries. Nothing. I had left Amanda and her lover frozen in shock, their carefully crafted world shattered in an instant. I returned to my hotel room, slipping inside as if nothing had happened. But everything had. I had been waiting for this moment, when the tables would turn. When Amanda's betrayal would no longer be concealed behind her well-rehearsed smiles and effortless lies. Now, it was raw and exposed, just as she deserved. I sat at the small desk, opened my laptop, and watched the live feed from room 1423. Amanda was pacing back and forth, running her hands through her hair, her face pale and panicked. Her lover, no longer the smug man he'd been moments before, sat on the edge of the bed, half-dressed and speechless. I watched as they whispered frantically, clearly unsure of what to do next. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. I hit stop on the recording, saving the footage to a secure folder. The video was perfect, every damning detail captured in high definition. Amanda's world was crumbling, and I held all the pieces. But this was only the beginning. Her downfall wouldn't stop here. No, I intended to burn it all down, piece by piece, starting with everything she valued. I took my time the next morning, savoring the calm before the storm. Amanda hadn't tried to contact me. No calls, no texts. Maybe she hoped I'd cool off and let her explain, or maybe she knew there was nothing she could say to change things. Either way, it didn't matter, she had already lost. I checked out of the hotel before noon, taking one last look at room 1423 as I passed by. The "Do Not Disturb" sign was gone, and so were they. I imagined their night spent in terrified silence, waiting for the inevitable fallout. As I drove home, satisfaction settled in. I knew my next move. I had spent years building my life, my reputation, my career, with Amanda woven into all of it. But that was about to change. It was time to unravel everything, to pull the rug out from under her so that when she returned from her affair, there would be nothing left for her to cling to. By the time I got home, I had a clear strategy. The divorce would be swift, clean, and devastating. I had already reached out to my lawyer, a friend I trusted implicitly. We had gone over the specifics before I even left for the hotel. He'd been waiting for the evidence I collected, and now I had more than enough to ensure Amanda walked away with nothing. I sat in my home office, reviewing the files and emails from the past few days. The images, the videos, everything I needed was right there. I sent them over to my lawyer with a short message: proceed with the papers. Make sure she feels it. Part of me wondered how she'd react when she received the divorce papers. Especially when she saw the evidence of her affair laid out in black and white. Would she beg for forgiveness? Try to claw back some semblance of control? It didn't matter. Her words meant nothing now. Her explanations, her tears, none of it mattered. What mattered was ensuring that when she came back from her trip, her life was in ruins. The next phase of my plan required time and precision. I had connections, friends in high places, people Amanda depended on professionally. People who would be very interested in knowing the truth about her. I made a few calls, dropping well-placed hints. Gossip spread quickly in the corporate world, faster than the truth. By the time Amanda returned, her reputation would be in tatters. One call to her boss set things in motion. I didn't need to say much, just a few subtle comments suggesting that maybe Amanda's priorities weren't as professional as they seemed. I sent an anonymous email too, attaching one of the more incriminating photos. That would be enough to make her boss question her commitment to the company, planting seeds of doubt that would inevitably lead to her downfall. Her friends would turn their backs soon enough. No one likes being associated with scandal, especially when it threatens their own social standing. Amanda had built her life on appearances, on being part of the right circles. But those circles were fickle, and they'd abandon her once they realized she was no longer the image of success she pretended to be. It was all so beautifully simple. I didn't need to scream, rage, or confront her in a fit of anger. This was better, calculated, methodical. The quiet, relentless destruction of everything she valued was complete. By the end of the week, the divorce papers were filed, and Amanda's professional and social life were on the brink of collapse. All that remained was her return home. I didn't bother tidying up the house. The remnants of our life together were still there, her clothes, her books, the photos of us that once adorned the walls. But they meant nothing now. When she walked through the door, she would be stepping into the ruins of a life that no longer existed. It was late in the evening when she finally arrived. I heard her car pull up outside, followed by the sound of her keys jingling in the lock. I sat in the living room, waiting, watching as the door opened and Amanda stepped inside. She looked exhausted, her face drawn and pale. Her eyes darted around the room, as if expecting something, maybe hoping for an argument or a confrontation that would allow her to explain herself. But I didn't move. I just sat there, calm and composed. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice small and hesitant, attempting to play the role of the concerned wife, as if nothing had happened. "Out," I replied coldly. Amanda took a few steps toward me, her hands trembling slightly. "We need to talk about." I cut her off sharply. "There's nothing to talk about. It's over, Amanda." She flinched, her eyes wide. "What do you mean? We can work through this." I stood up, my gaze locked on hers. "I filed for divorce. The papers are on their way. I've sent the evidence of your affair to your boss. You should start looking for a new job. And as for your friends? They know, too." Her face crumpled, the color draining as reality set in. You did what?" I smiled, a cold, hard smile. I made sure you got exactly what you deserved." Amanda stood frozen, her world crumbling. I can explain," she stammered, her voice breaking, but the fight was gone from her. She wasn't pleading for forgiveness, she was drowning in the aftermath of her choices. I didn't move. I had prepared for this moment for days, even years, if I was honest. It wasn't just about Amanda's affair. It was about her constant need to control, manipulate, and believe she could have everything without facing consequences. But now, those consequences were staring her in the face, and she couldn't escape. "There's no explanation left to give," I said steadily. "I know everything, Amanda. And now? Everyone else does, too." Her eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. This wasn't grief, it was a desperate attempt to cling to what was already lost. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered, taking a shaky step forward. We could have fixed it." I let out a cold laugh, shaking my head. "Fixed it? You think an apology fixes this? You didn't just break our marriage, Amanda. You destroyed it, piece by piece. And now, you'll live with the wreckage." The silence between us was heavy, but I had nothing more to say. I had already spoken volumes with my actions. Every part of her life had been dismantled, her career, her friendships, her reputation. Now, her marriage was gone, too. "I'm leaving," I said, breaking the quiet, grabbing the bag I'd packed earlier. "You've got the house for now. But don't get too comfortable. The divorce will make sure you don't keep much of it." Amanda's tears spilled over, but they weren't the kind of tears that moved me. They were the tears of someone who had finally grasped how much they had lost. I could see it in her eyes, the realization that her game was over, that her lies had caught up to her. She was trapped in the web she had spun. I didn't look back as I walked out the door, I didn't need to. The sound of her sobs echoing through the house was enough. The divorce went through swiftly, just as I'd planned. Amanda fought for pieces of our life, but I had made sure she wouldn't walk away with much. Her once bright career was in ruins, her reputation beyond repair. Her social circle had vanished, leaving her alone to sift through the debris of the life she had destroyed. And me? I moved on, slowly but deliberately. There was no rush. Revenge isn't about the satisfaction of seeing someone else fall. It's about reclaiming your own life after the dust settles. It's about remembering who you are without the person who tried to take everything from you. The lesson is simple. Betrayal, no matter how well hidden, always catches up with you. Lies may seem manageable at first, but they compound until the weight is unbearable. And when the truth finally emerges, it doesn't just reveal what was hidden, it destroys everything in its path. In the end, Amanda's downfall wasn't just because she cheated, it was because she believed she was untouchable. She thought she could have everything without offering anything real in return. But life has a way of leveling the scales, of showing people like her that the things they take for granted, trust, loyalty, love, come at a price. And once they're gone, you can't get them back. As for me, I walked away, not as a man broken by betrayal, but as someone who had regained control. Someone who had learned that revenge isn't about rage or impulse, it's about precision. It's about letting the truth do the work, showing the betrayer that their choices, not yours, led them to ruin. In the end, Amanda lost everything because of her own decisions. And that is the truest form of justice. Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story will make this one look like a fairy tale.